Hello, everyone. Tess Thomas here from Clay County Historical and Arts Council. Welcome back to another video interview of our new series, One-on-One with Clay County History. Today, we're in the home of Harry and Desna Jarrett in Hayesville, North Carolina. Thank you so much, you guys, for having us.
Welcome.
We are going to pause here and go inside the homestead and do a little bit of an interview one-on-one with Harry. So stay tuned. Harry, thank you so much for having us. We appreciate your time. Thank you for telling us a little bit about yourself. Can you start off with telling us how your dad's family came to this area?
Yes, my dad's family, actually the Jarretts, moved from Pennsylvania and to Buncombe County, North Carolina, and then later William Patton Jarrett moved to Clay County. And I think he acquired some property, which is now underwater, Collection 2.
Really?
And on my mother's side, she was Eileen Price, and her family moved here. It was around 1850. Madison Curtis, and he acquired quite a bit of property that was on this side of the river from somewhere to close here to Downings Creek almost. And so that's how my mother and father's family came to be in Clay County.
And where did your parents meet?
Well, interesting enough, they grew up on Jarrett Road. The Jarrett home was built about 1912 here on Jarrett Road. It's still standing. And my mother's house was built about 1923, and it's still standing and occupied by family. Amazing. So they grew up close together, about a half a mile apart, and circumstances would have it, married sometime later.
Right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I understand there's a really unique story about this house that we're sitting in.
Yeah, it's not, it was built around 1935, and the age of the house is certainly not that important because there are a lot of houses on Jarrett Road built in the 30s. As I mentioned earlier, my parents' house built in the 1912, 1920s, and then there's two homes that family lived in were built around 1990s. But what's interesting about the history of this house is where it's located now. This house was a log cabin and belonged to some of the family, and when my mother and dad were married, they decided to move it here. I had my father and my uncle, my dad's brother, bought some property here together. And they have a house just across the road, my Uncle Neil. And then this home, when they decided they were going to move it, the story is sort of interesting as how it moved. So it was a log cabin, and it was moved a little over a mile down Jarrett Road, which was a gravel road at that time. And the house was pulled. I've heard different stories, but the latest I've heard, the house was actually pulled by the state maintenance by a truck. And they had neighbors here to help, and they would roll it on logs, and every time, they rolled across a log on the back, there would be men to take it and put it in front, and it just kept moving.
You're kidding.
Now,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and how held together over that, I've never understood.
Right?
Yeah.
And gravel on top of it.
Yeah.
To be sure, it wasn't a long, straight, flat spot.
No,
right?
That's for sure. And part of it, there's a short distance from here, there's a really sharp curve. And the story is that they got the house hung in that curve. They couldn't get around the curve, so it had to sit there all night with the road blocked until they were able to move it the next day.
How were they able to get it unhung?
I'm not sure, but I've heard there were the tree limbs were cut, and other things just because it was a narrow road at that time. But
Sure.
I've always been amazed how, because the log home is put together with concrete, how it withstood that moving.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but that's an
Miraculously
interesting.
it did,
yeah,
yes.
That's an interesting part.
So, who all lived in the house? The
Well,
cabin?
my mother and dad, I have two older sisters.
And what are their names?
Sarah and Norma.
Sarah and Norma and Harry.
Mm-hmm.
So, as children, you know, what do you remember doing in this area?
Number one, it was a happy childhood as far as growing up. I have three uncles. I had three uncles who were all farmers. So, two of them dairy farmers, and one farmed at the property here and other places that he had. He farmed raising cattle and small crops and things like that. And then my other two uncles were dairy farmers. So I sort of grew up being very familiar with farm life, that sort of thing. And the other thing I remember, and it was true of a lot of homes, families here in Clay County, is that families did different things to try to generate some income for the family.
Sure.
At one time, there was a lot of chicken houses in Clay County. You know, like we had two. Almost all the family had chicken houses, and we had the chickens and sold the eggs. That was just one source of income. You know, we all had gardens, and we killed hogs. We had milk cows. All of those things back in the early days that I remember. And I had a first cousin, or have a first cousin, Tommy, who grew up across the street, and we were very close. We played together, worked together.
And you worked on these farms?
Yeah, I helped my uncles. My dad didn't farm. My dad was a game warden, and they call them, I think, wildlife resource officers now.
Right.
But something I did think of is a little bit unusual. One night, Daddy came home from work, and it was dark, and he told my sisters, and I said, "There's something in the car for you. Why don't you go check on it?" And we went, and it was a tiny baby fawn that the mother had been killed. And they brought it home, and we raised the deer from the time it was really small, and it just became a pet.
Oh, that guy's amazing.
I have a picture of it posing with us, but it would run and play just like a dog. It would sleep in the woods at night, and back then, you know, the deer are so plentiful now, but you didn't see some wildlife that we see now that we're accustomed to. We never saw it back then.
Right.
And it was unusual, and people would come just to see
the
deer.
Oh,
and it would just run.
Did you name it?
Well, we have original name, Bambi.
Right, very original, of course. And so then you grew up and went to high school here.
Went to high school.
And then, so what did y'all do to socialize during high school years?
Well, when I was in high school, on the weekends, of course, during the week, downtown Hayesville was busy because I had all the businesses. But as I was older, we had a movie theater that opened, and going to the movies on Saturday night was very popular. And then it was open on Sunday, and we had a local drugstore that was open on Sunday that had a soda fountains and a jukebox, and we would go hang out a while and then go to the movie, or if we didn't, young people would just sit in their cars or sit on the square and socialize. That was just what we did at that particular time.
Right.
You know.
And that was when the movies were black and white, yes?
Oh yes.
Did they have street dances too, you said?
Well, yes. On the square in the street. Yeah.
And they would block the traffic off?
Yeah.
They just do the Friday night street dance still every July, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then I understand you went off to school.
Yes, I graduated from high school in 1960 and went off to college. I graduated from UNC Asheville later. But one thing I remember about high school is that if I remember, the only sports that we had girls basketball, boys basketball, and football. And that's the only sports I think that we could participate in at that time.
Hayesville High School?
At Hayesville High School, yeah.
They have much more than that
They
now,
have,
don't they?
they do.
So while you were off to school, to college, in the 70s, the Clay County Historical and Arts Council was created, and a little bird told me that was your aunt and uncle, Edgar and Gertrude Price.
That is correct, yeah. Yeah, they actually moved back. He was a Methodist minister, and they moved back, and one of the houses built in 1890 that I referred to earlier is where they lived.
Oh, wow.
And she was very instrumental in getting the Arts Council started, as well as the Jarrett Road beautification project. And that involved all the families on Jarrett Road, and we had competition with other communities throughout western North Carolina. So it was always, everybody was always working. We mowed all the banks on the side of the road. We asked DOT not to mow them so we could do it, and we just took care of it and took a lot of pride in the in the community. And so.
And then, was there once a year where you had the Luminaries?
Yeah, we
Tell me
did
about
that. Well, that's something else that came out of that. For many years, a date would be set when we'd have the Jarrett Road Luminaries, and it was quite a bit of work, and it took quite a bit of involvement of the people living in the community, because what it consisted of is, of course, with the Luminaries, we had little brown paper bags. You had to put sand in the bottom. You had to put candles out ever so many feet. And then at a certain time, everybody would get out from one end of Jarrett Road to the other and light those candles on both sides of the road.
Like right about dusk?
Yeah, and it was advertised, and we would have hundreds of cars just drive by.
I bet that was a beautiful sight.
It was, and we really enjoyed it. It was a lot of hard work. So
what would you all just sit in the yard or on the porch and wave at everybody as they drove by?
Well, it was dark, but we'd just see the cars coming up and down.
That's a neat memory, though.
You know, it is.
You don't see stuff like that in communities anymore. That's sad. So I guess in the late 90s, you guys started working on the homestead?
Well, it was around, we were living, my wife and I were living in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so it sort of came that time, you know, I decided to retire. And we had this home place here because my two older sisters and I, when we sort of divided up the property, I ended up with a home place. And so we just sort of thought maybe it's time, would be nice to move back here. And so we started some renovation before we moved back, and we moved back while we completed it. And mainly that's what I did for several months, is helping do that.
Well, I noticed that the homestead now is quite a bit larger than when it was moved a mile down the road.
Yeah, it is.
So now you have how many bedrooms?
Well, we have one bedroom downstairs and 2 bedrooms upstairs.
Right, so you tripled your space.
Yeah.
So kind of let me know, you were gone and now you've come back and you've been here over 20 years now, right?
23 to 24.
Right, so tell us about kind of what that means to you, being back at the homestead and back to your roots.
Well, as I've become more and more appreciative of being back in Clay County, which we love, and but also of having grown up here with a lot of childhood memories with cousins and things we did, and you know, everybody had a front porch at that time.
Right.
Families and friends spent a lot of time on the front porch. But what's really, because I work outside, I mow, I try to take care of things. But I've thought, when I'm out mowing or I'm out doing something, that I'll see something that will cause a flashback to some childhood memory or, something that I remember doing.
Right.
And I was thinking today that there's a rock on the steep part of my yard out here that I have to mow around, which is not very easy. And I've often thought, I need to take my tractor and just move that rock. It's such an aggravation. But I remember that there was a hickory nut tree located close by. And that rock is about like that. And in the top of that rock is the nicest little indention where you could put a hickory nut in. And my sisters and I we'd have another rock there. My sisters and I would crack hickory nut nuts.
Oh,
So
you can't move it.
I just thought, I can't do that.
No,
So
absolutely not.
I just keep mowing around it.
Right. That's amazing. Is there anything else you want to tell us? Any other story that comes to mind?
Well, not to reveal, this is a family story, not to reveal too much of the past, but there is a story that the rest of the family like to remember, remind me of. My dad and with my uncles and family had built a barn out here because there was cattle here on the place. And the barn wasn't quite completed, but it had corn in the crib. And we'd take the corn out, shuck the corn, throw the shucks out around the barn. And I was young, and my mother had a fire. I don't know if she was washing clothes or whatever down the backyard, and I sneaked a few matches out, and I went out, and I thought, I bet these shucks will burn. So
I bet they did.
I did light those shucks and got sort of afraid and came back to the house. And later I heard my mother just yelling and screaming, Harry, the barn's on fire, the barn's on fire. So I'm out here on the hill trying to yell for my aunt that lived across the road to come get the fire out. But to make a long story short, we were able to get the fire out. It burned inside the aisle of the barn, and till I had to tear it down, the walls were still blackened and everything. So that was my first experience and last with playing with matches.
Absolutely. And you said your siblings and your family loves to remind you of that.
Well, they do.
Remember when you
tell us about when you almost burned the barn.
Well, this has been amazing and wonderful. I so appreciate you having us.
I think what you're
sharing
doing
your
is
story.
just, I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
The history of, the history of Clay County means a lot, but the history of Clay County, we've, have friends that have moved here from other areas, and they just seem to love Clay County, and I feel really good about what's going on. And this is just another way to get promoted and make people aware.
Well, not just that, but let's not ever forget where we came from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you or anyone you know is interested in doing a one-on-one with Clay County history interview with me, Tess Thomas, please don't hesitate to email me at cchacHayesville@outlook.com. Again, my name is Tess Thomas, and thank you for joining us for one-on-one with Clay County from Clay County Historical and Arts Council. Thank you. See you next time.